This is Test Case Scenario with me, your host, Jason Baum. This podcast is the definitive hub for knowledge and stories in the software testing and development communities. If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button and let's dive straight into the episode. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Test Case Scenario. I am your host, Jason Baum. With me, as always, my partner in crime, Marcus Merrill. Marcus, where are you today?
Berlin at the Moxie Hotel near the big train station, and it's been great.
Thank you, Marcus. And Marcus is like so dedicated to this. He never misses a podcast, no matter where he is. He's done the call from a train. He's done it from, like, I think the back of a car. I think he did driving once.
I was driving once.
Yeah, we probably shouldn't tell people that, but you did. In multiple hotels, hands-free. It wasn't one of those self-driving cars, I guess.
No.
Actually, you should have said yes.
A little bit safe.
I think you should have said yes. Okay, that's enough of that. And because we have a very special guest today, I am very excited to introduce our guest, Jason Huggins. Jason, I feel like you don't need much of an introduction, but I'm going to give an introduction in case you have never heard of Jason Huggins. Let me tell you who this guy is. So Jason is currently the founder and CEO of Tapster Robotics. He had famous for creating Selenium 20 years ago, founding Sauce Labs 16 years ago, actually yesterday, and playing a key role in the founding and I guess the evolution of the Appium project and so much more. So Jason, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Was that a good intro, or was that like the worst intro you've had?
You can go another 10 minutes.
Yeah, do you want me to re-record?
Well, you said just yesterday. I mean, it was like 16 year, like the anniversary. Right? It's not like I literally whatever.
Yeah, so this is coming. Okay, so here behind the third wall, fourth
Am
wall,
I making you have to do it over again? I hope
absolutely not. No, we edit,
good.
but we're not going to edit this. This is great. I'm gonna peel back.
No rollbacks. We're just
fourth
rolling
wall,
forward.
I guess it is for the audience. So we record this show. Shocker. We record before we air it, and we are recording this on July 11th, which is 16 years from when you left Google. You gave your notice, and then it is airing on July 31st, which is a day after Sauce Labs' 16th anniversary. So I feel like that's kind of cool.
Yep. I wanted to put in my 2 weeks notice at Google, so then my last day was July 4th for poetic reasons, but I fumbled the paperwork, so I left exactly 7 days later on July 11th, 2008, and then we formally incorporated Sauce a couple of weeks later.
Did you envision having a big speech like in Independence Day, the movie? Like you're like, this is our... that's what I envision. Anyway.
I need to go watch that again. There's a couple of been memes that people have spliced together his speech, just different commentary. And it's just funny how some movies, like, they read differently given the current kind of context, whatever. I'll have to go find a link to send to you about what I was talking about. But yeah, that speech was good. But it's funny how people are kind of mocking it now. Like, like there was a time where enthusiastic, patriotic, optimistic speeches were like, there was totally a market for that, right? And I think there's still a market for it, but there's
I would so take an enthusiastic speech right now.
Maybe this is turning the page into the content you want to, the stuff you want to talk about. It just feels there's a lot more cynicism and pessimism, and there's like an optimistic speech is not as believable, if that makes sense, right?
That's a great transition for what we want to talk about today. So, well, we'll see if it's cynicism. I don't know. I'm going to set up the premise, and then we could kind of decide.
The real cynicists would say they're just realists. They would deny their cynicism. They're saying, no, I'm not. Or sorry, the pessimism, right? It's like, no, I'm
that's
just
what I
real.
always consider myself. I'm just speaking. I'm just talking about reality. This is reality.
Right.
Reality just seems to be pessimistic. I don't know. Okay, so we had a blog come out a few weeks ago called "Everything is Software and Everything is Broken." It's a great article. I suggest you read it, not because we put it out, but because I mean, I would tell you if it was crap. It was not crap. It was very, very good. It was really interesting. We put data in there. I love a good article with data to back up what you're saying. And
you had your receipts, like yeah.
That's
it wasn't
right.
just a
That's
rant.
right.
It was a rant with footnotes, right?
And that is the best kind of rant, is it not? So we wanted to talk about that concept of everything is software, everything is broken with you. And like, do you agree? And I guess that's kind of a great first question. Do you agree that everything is broken?
So when you teased this up you asked me that question, well, hey, you want to talk about that specific thing? And I replied, I mean, no, in the sense of like, I disagreed because I have bigger problems that in my day-to-day, I worry about. And software is not on the top 5 list. I don't know. Maybe it's in the top 10 somewhere if I had to go figure out what 8, 9, and 10 is. My particular rant was, I've got, this is probably true of anybody who goes to buy as a dehumidifier. I live in Chicago. It's very humid. And in the basic theme of they don't make anything like they used to is roughly like, my dehumidifier breaks every year, right? And if the pump doesn't work now, I have to deal with that. My oven is busted. I have to go get a new oven, but that's weird because the future is induction ovens. I have a current gas oven, but you can't just swap out a gas oven. You have to get a gas plumber. That's a specific kind of plumber that can decommission a gas line. And then I would put that in. So logistically of hiring a plumber and an electrician and getting a new thing, that's on my top list. And I have a dead electrical line to my garage because when we replaced the grass 2 years ago, they accidentally cut the electrical line. And the reason why we had to replace the grass was because I don't know how to keep a grass from being overcome by weeds, right? None of this stuff is software. And these are all just like my top things of what do I do? When I have a software problem, it's pretty easy to work around. Like I had a Zoom call earlier and these little Bluetooth headphone things didn't work. I immediately swapped it out and I used my wired things. That took me 10 seconds to switch, right? Or if some stupid thing doesn't work in Chrome, I've got Firefox and Safari I can switch to. Or I feel like, yeah, software is busted, but I don't know, like if Twitter won't accept my dumb thought of the moment, it'll work again in 10 seconds, right? I'll be annoyed that I'll have to retype it in again. But maybe that's a message from the universe that I should probably think twice before posting that, right? Actually, usually I think that every time a call gets dropped or an internet connection drops and I'm in the middle of ranting like I am now or whatever, that's usually, I take that as a signal from the universe that
you were meant to continue. That actually, I think that actually happened to us once. I'm pretty sure a call dropped.
So I don't get as frustrated about software glitches, I think. Like, I think the premise of that blog post was like, everything is broken. I'm like, okay, maybe I'll concede, maybe things are broken, but I guess maybe I would disagree on the severity, right? I would argue that, anything that was like something that was broken and then also killed people. Okay, yes, I would be agreement on that. But if it's like Twitter crashed because Twitter fired 90% of their staff and now nothing works, like, okay, yeah, that's annoying. I'm not sure if that's on my top 10 list, though.
In some respect, I agree, but I also disagree because I think there are, like, you can up the ante, like you said. So I have like my own personal experience with this. I withheld from telling you guys this because I wanted to wait till the episode to share it and get your reactions. But my father was diagnosed with a brain tumor like 4 years ago, and he had to go for cyberknife when they first diagnosed him. And you have to go through the schedule. Like I had to do this for him.
What is cyber?
Cyberknife is a laser removal or shrinkage, I guess, of a tumor. So it's non-invasive other than a laser being shot into your head. I don't know how we could argue if that's invasive or
non-invasive.
Yeah, non-invasive. But I guess
non-invasive as lasers to your head can be.
Yeah, exactly.
It's got the word cyber in it. That sounds kind of cool.
It's kind of cool, right?
Just like Cybertruck. Very cool.
but they told me I had to
Right.
go to like schedule, and it was one of those digital scheduling assistants, and unfortunately the digital scheduling assistant like did not work, and it booked the
Right.
wrong time. There was an error, and a bug, and like we tried to resolve it. You tried doing it the old-fashioned way, call. No, you have to go through the scheduling system. That's just an error of the ways, I think, of today. Like you're solving a problem and making it 10 times worse.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, he couldn't get Cyberknife because the tumor grew. And
okay, that does suck. And it's also because it adds that in that life and death aspect to it, that it does up the ante.
If I take any consolation from that, it's probably the same software team that developed that scheduling app, not the same team that developed the part that puts the laser in your brain.
Probably not.
A different level of precision and fidelity in those
Wait,
use cases.
so he literally did not get
he did not get that procedure. No,
that ship sailed.
They had to open it up. Yeah, and that went to a whole
because
other thing
the timing was just so you missed
was
the
that
window.
tight.
Where,
yeah,
that does suck. I'm not going to say that doesn't suck.
Titus, who works with us, he was testing on a naval submarine that carried a warhead. While I won't say that's like everyone's situation, and your oven problem is far more likely to be the scenario. I just had a fridge break recently, and that also sucks, just on a different level. I think you can up the ante on some of this stuff.
Right. And I think my particular reply, it's like everyone is living their own, there's various little truisms about how to understand the world, but everyone is the main character in their movie, right? I'm just a supporting character in your movie, but whatever, right? So I've got my top 10 list and everyone else has their own different top 10, right? And so if you are navigating, going back to the healthcare thing, I've heard something that if you're experiencing pain or in really acute pain, nothing else in the world exists. It's hard to imagine oh, hey, where am I going to retire? Or what do I want for dinner tomorrow? It's you only have what you're experiencing in that moment. That is your universe. And you just want it to go away. You're not even going to care about software at that point, unless software was, I guess, the thing that put you in that situation. But there's a certain level, everyone has their own bubble, I guess, effectively, that they're living in. And right now I'm living in my, middle-aged white guy suburban home, broken appliances list. And I have the luxury of not complaining about anything else.
You do have a lot of broken appliances, I will just say. You listed a lot of broken appliances.
The method to my madness here is again, it's kind of like startup life and entrepreneur life of the, everything in a startup, nothing happens unless I make it happen, right? So I can go spend a month and make everything in my house perfect, but that's basically an opportunity cost of, and then nothing happens in my day job stuff. So there's constantly the promise with my wife, who's incredibly patient, was okay, well, when we close that big deal with so-and-so, then I swear that next month I'll go replace the oven. Of course, she's been patiently waiting a year now, but that deal is still, I swear it'll be coming.
But let's go back to healthcare, because you said the word. I didn't even say the word. Obviously, that's what I'm talking about, but you said healthcare. Well, you were instrumental in healthcare.gov. Let's talk about that.
There was actually yes, let's do that. There was a story. There's many stories. Well, one thing I learned just being a part of that. Again, I have very unique complaints that I can't complain about, but I'll complain about here, and I'm sure everyone will roll their eyes.
Cool.
There's very few stories written about it, but there was one that was the Time magazine story. And I'm not on the cover of Time. And one of the guys, but it was the group of people that I was with for 2 months, and I was the one person not in that picture, whatever. Again, play the world's smallest violin for that complaint, right? But one thing you realize when you're in this environment where, I remember the day in and day out, just little stuff of I wake up and it's you turn on the TV and they're talking about the site being down and how Obama is going to deal with it, right? You get in the car, you turn on the radio, they're talking about that. You get your free copy of USA Today, front page, it's the site is down, end of the presidency, all that stuff like that. So you're just literally, it almost feels a comical little in those first 2 minutes of some movie setting the stage, where the radio, the TV, the newspaper, it's all saying the plot points. And then we're going into undisclosed location number, whatever. And I go to my terminal and I start, fixing the thing. And no one knows. I'm that meme where I'm just standing in the corner, no one knows. But there's these things you realize that whatever does get communicated about any national or international disaster, you are only getting 1% of the story. And whatever that 1% got out, that was workshopped to oblivion by 50 people. And that was pushed out as the message of the day. There is 99 other things that are just as interesting that did not rise to the level of this is the thing we wanted to communicate, or this is the thing that we have to get in front of and shoot down and whatever. Anyway, so like, it's kind of impossible to believe, granted, I think we're getting to the point now where you might have listeners who were not alive when healthcare.gov was a disaster, whatever. But it is. But it's weird to think that a software, speaking of bugs and everything's broken, how often is a broken website literally the most important problem that the president of the strongest country in the world, whatever, how often does that, like, that is literally bigger than any international crisis with nuclear weapons or whatever. It's like, was the website fixed yet? Has that ever happened?
Taylor Swift
was that, Marcus?
National tour. The president very much got involved.
Yeah, there you go.
Right. So it is kind of ridiculous. So yeah, it does. If occasionally, as you were saying, it escalates. Occasionally gets up there. One thing though, like again, one of those things that never got talked about, but it was one of those things that are ridiculous. And I think it's enough years have passed. I don't think anyone's going to get in trouble for this. But one of the things I think the president said, maybe we can go find the footnote for this, where he said like, "Hey, I get it. The website needs some work, but if you're having any issues, you can call the 1-800 number, or you can go down to an office and fill out the paper form." What was not said, and I think we even didn't realize this at the time, yes, there were call centers. There totally were call centers. Guess what they were using? They were also using the website. The people in the call centers would say, "Oh, yes, thank you for calling 1-800 healthcare, whatever. Like, let's take your information." And if the site was down for just random people, the site was also down for everyone in the call center. And so that was not, it's like turtles all the way down. It was like one broken website all the way down, right?
This happened again during the pandemic when scheduling sites for various companies that had the vaccine, coming out with the original schedules, and people had to go and book, and they were crashing left and right, and
different state unemployment systems also were down.
Right.
Yep.
There's so many different like technical stories about this that only you got to the headline of the site was broken. And that was like, it worked when only 5 people attempted to log in. It feels like this was one of the first times or only times. Let's like say it differently. Any other software system that the country had built or whatever, it was usually like, or contracted out to get built. It was usually an internal app used by all of the employees in some federal building. This is one of the few times where they literally at a nationwide scale were trying to launch a website that everyone was expected to use on day one. They were warned that they should do a phased rollout, didn't do it. They probably should have been more cynical in realizing that they expected more state exchanges to be the primary method of registration. And the federal website was supposed to be the backup. But because of politics, a whole bunch of states basically said, we're not participating. And then they told their citizens, oh, just use the federal site. So the expectations of how many more millions of people were going to use the site basically escalated overnight, but they didn't change any, because of the way federal contracting works, all of that was baked into the cake years earlier on when they designed all that stuff. And also, there's another kind of takeaway from this was, I remember at my kind of going away dinner a couple months later with Todd Park, US CTO. In Todd we trust is the way we, our mantra. Every day we would do our stuff, and then we'd go have dinner with Todd. And then Todd would either have just come from the White House or would go back to the White House. He'd always talk about his 2 cents of like, because we're technically not working for the White House. We're subcontracted through all the various different stuff. You can get in big trouble if you said you were working for the White House. You're working in coordination with whatever, right? There's a whole bunch of federal contracting rules. So you had to be very careful that he's like just saying, the president's worried about this thing that might be happening tomorrow, right? But he can't say like, do this, right? Whatever. So Todd would occasionally say his 2 cents of like, hey, this other thing's happening tomorrow. But where I was going with this was at my going away dinner, I kind of realized that like taking all of the things that were broken and realizing we're dealing downstream with all of this stuff that was decided years earlier by a bunch of people who had no idea what they were doing. And so the real solution is to be in the room where it happens, where the dumb people are deciding, we're going to do a system like this, and we're going to use these components, and we're going to divide it into 1,000 subcontracts and give it to people who have never done this before. And we're going to use weird technologies for no good reason other than the vendor who we talked to last said it was a good idea. I don't want to use the jargony like shift left, whatever, but it's kind of like that, but it's shift even farther left, where you're in the room where everyone's like, I guess it's the classic political thing where they're just playing poker and smoking cigars, and someone's saying, wouldn't it be cool if we had a healthcare system? And you want to be right there and say, yes, but don't use a document database storage. You want to be right there in that moment where it's just like, shut your mouth, don't say document data storage, right?
So to bring it back to the article, like, is that what's happening? So obviously software's gotten more complex, and what we're putting software in is getting to be more complex.
Yeah.
Is that the problem, that like those who are testing the software might not be in the room when those decisions are made, or the design process is happening, or the early development? I mean, obviously shift left, like you had mentioned, but I have a whole article about how shift left is dead. So that's neither here nor there, but
there was one thing about that article, the very first 3 or 4 paragraphs, that actually informed what I went and did some prototypes and worked on a couple of months later. There was another aspect of things where New Relic added technical insight, like the database is down, but how do you know unless you actually have it instrumented to tell you that the database is down, right? Or that the CPUs are pegged at 100% or whatever. All of that observability stuff, right? People would just try to go to the website and you can't connect, but why, right? So what happens is everyone on that tech surge team, they look like geniuses because they would just install New Relic on a new server, and all of a sudden it's like turning on the lights for the first time, right? But what was missing, so they basically, the story of the day was every time the site would go down, a new thing would be discovered that they did not have insight. Another new database that they didn't realize was bringing down the entire thing. They would go put New Relic on that, and now they have visibility into that, and now they can be more preemptive. Oh man, I've got so many stories. But one of them was, even if you had the world's perfect dashboard of just numbers and graphs and metrics, you need to pair that with an actual eyeball visual confirmation of the thing. And so the first couple of paragraphs of that time story was, at some point, okay, fine, it was on every newspaper and every TV and whatever, and they were getting reports and but literally they would open up the laptop in the Oval Office and open and type in healthcare.gov and hit enter and see whether it's up or not. It was such a chaotic environment that they didn't trust literally anybody in the reporting hierarchy of the entire federal government. There were people literally in the White House, so they just get the freaking laptop and open it up. I want to see it with my own eyes, whether it's working or not, right?
Wow.
So there's this thing where you can have all the software written, and then you can have all this instrumenting dashboard stuff, but you still need a human to look at the thing and maybe poke it with a stick, whatever. I mean, I think it's still even kind of fascinating living in Tornado Alley here in the Midwest. You have all of these really, really sophisticated radar systems. I know I'm jumping around with my metaphors and anecdotes and whatever, but it's interesting how occasionally the NOAA or National Weather Service will also ask for weather spotters. Occasionally, it says like a radar indicated tornado, but they still need people to literally open their window, look outside and say, yep, that's a tornado, right? I mean, it feels weird that we're in that world. You would think that we're living in this sci-fi, Star Wars-y kinds of things, but occasionally you need just literally a human to say, yep, that's effed up. I can see it, right? So sometimes I feel like maybe we're missing that. I don't know if maybe this becomes a rant about AI or humans in the loop or whatever, maybe that is. But there's this thing where, what's the phrase here? Again, jumping around to these autopilot systems in planes, right? There was this research paper where the more things get automated, ironically and unintuitively, you actually raise the skill required of the person who's still in the loop, because now it handles 99% of the stuff, but the 1% or 0.1% that the system can't handle and it kicks out to a human, it's going to be the really weird, wild stuff that the computer can't even figure out, right? And so there's this weird thing where you do need, I think, kind of pontificating about the future and how to fix things and whatever. You still need humans in the loop, But the specific thing that also needs to happen is you counterintuitively, you have higher skill demands. You can't have just a person looking at it and say, oh yeah, I'll just restart it. It's like, no. The computer is going to know, the AI, whatever, is going to know how to do that one. It's going to be, oh yeah, you need to restart it, but you're also descending at 1,000 feet per second and 3 engines are out. Go. you're the human in that situation, right? So you have to be incredibly well trained. So there is this weird optimistic thing where we actually need like even that much more emphasis on literacy and education and math and science, because the more things get automated, the smarter you need everyone to handle the situations where the whole system is broken, right? Anyway,
that makes sense. That makes sense. I'm thinking as you're talking about it, I'm like, I feel like they would need to know less, but then the way you describe it, it's like, yeah, I guess it would. I would
it's
hope
this
that they would
famous
know more.
paper. Someone will either comment or we can find it after this, but there's someone.
If you know what Jason's talking about, shoot us a... All right, Marcus, you go.
I was just thinking about Idiocracy and how nobody knew how to operate the things. They just kept working and dispensing stuff until they started to kind of break down, and there was nobody in charge. And you had the idea that they were 10 minutes per disaster. I don't know. I kind of wonder if we've already seen that bear out a little bit in this sort of test automation that we encounter here at Sauce, all the time. If we've seen already that, a lot of folks were taken out of the testing during the pandemic and after in the high interest rate hangover, that kind of thing. And I wonder if we're already starting to see that the people who are left are the ones who are kind of running the whole ship and maintaining that really, really difficult stuff. So I feel like there's something in there that definitely rings true. I'd love to read the paper to find out more about it.
Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us for part 1 of this episode with Jason Huggins. We recorded this episode prior to the global outage incident that took place a couple weeks ago at this point. And we had no idea when recording that was about to happen, but it does emphasize the points that we were trying to make. It also kind of counters some of those points. And I don't think that any of us thought that what happened was about to happen. And we're really excited that we had that conversation with Jason that we can now go back to and watch, now knowing kind of what took place and being able to take some of what Jason was talking about and Marcus was talking about and myself too, and applying it so that this doesn't happen to your business. We're excited to bring you part 2 coming next week. I hope you'll join us then. Thank you for joining us on Test Case Scenario. Share your thoughts in the comments. We'll make sure to respond to each and every single one. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell to keep in touch. If you missed our last episode, it's popping up on your screen right now. Go, click it. Until next time on Test Case Scenario.